I'm on Periscope too, so I'm gonna see
Okay.
what kind of traffic I get.
Hi, Dan.
Hey Dan. Oh, not gonna be doing calls right now. I wonder if he's,
Who was that?
I don't know who it is. Can you hear okay, Dan? Does the water mess with the sound?
Yeah, is the water too loud in the background? The lighting was better. I wonder if I have it where you can't see comments, or have you seen it?
I have it. Some people
Oh,
join.
yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Cool.
So it's good. The water's not too loud. Okay.
Drop it.
Yeah.
This is one here, but I don't see anybody.
Yeah. That's weird.
Mine has 9.
I have 4 viewers, but I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Ides. We used to talk about making the Ides great again and synchronous dates in history, but now we've changed it to just talk about whatever we want because we've pretty much covered, a year's worth of synchronous dates. And the other, Will Chamberlain did a scope the other day when Office of Mike Morrison was banned, suspended. Office of Mike, if you don't know him, his account had over 50,000. I think his personal account,
almost 60,000.
and then he had the most popular AOC parody account. I think he had like 80,000 followers. And anyway, Twitter banned him supposedly for violating the rules. And Will Chamberlain did a scope where he called it the Morrison Affair, aptly titled after the Dreyfus Affair. And we wanted to talk more about the Dreyfus Affair because the Dreyfus Affair, we talked about this affair back in October.
And we mostly talked about it in relation to what's going on with the Trump, the bogus Russiagate story, and how there were a lot of similarities with that. They had a thing called a bordereau, which started the whole thing.
Yeah.
Which is like their version of a dossier. Put a fancy French name to something and it's supposed to give it more legitimacy.
Yeah. Sounds like it matters.
On
But anyway, so he did this comparison of the Dreyfus Affair to the Morrison Affair. But what we've got now is kind of like the Dreyfus Affair on steroids. There's a bunch of wrong, accusations going on. For those of you that don't know, the Dreyfus Affair was back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Was he a general?
He was a captain in the French army.
And he was framed. He
Alfred
was set
Dreyfus.
up. He was set up. And it didn't start out as an anti-Semitic act, but that fueled the fire.
The press of the time really stoked those flames.
Slowly. Yeah, they are. They're not going to let what happened in 2016 in the election of Donald Trump happen again. And they think by quashing all of our voices, which, I guess it remains to be seen whether they can accomplish that. But so the Dreyfus affair starts in 1894, I think it was.
Uh-huh.
I mean, this guy was a family man. He was an honorable guy. He was respected by the ranks.
Patriotic Frenchman.
And so I don't know exactly. Okay, so like the Trump Russia thing, we all know that this witch hunt is to cover up for the last administration's corruption.
For their crimes.
I think that's one of the reasons why they're having such a hard time covering their tracks. They're going backwards instead of covering up their tracks at every step that they went along, because they didn't think they were going to have to. It's hard to keep your story straight. It's hard to count for everything, and so now you've got all these
so many parallels. I mean, the way that the Dreyfus affair started is that they had a maid at the German embassy in Paris that found a torn up letter in a trash can, which ended up being called a bordereau, and it was supposedly a French officer basically saying he's going to share some artillery secrets with the Germans.
And so,
the French.
That probably did happen. Somebody was leaking that kind of information.
We believe that was Esterhazy.
But yeah, they were covering up for somebody.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't this guy. So this piece of paper that was wadded up and thrown in the trash, it was torn to pieces, and they put it back together, and they all got together and colluded and got a handwriting.
Supposedly, he wasn't a handwriting expert, but he called himself one. And so some of the proof, they said that this was written by Dreyfus, is that he disguised his own handwriting. So the reason that the handwriting wasn't completely similar is because he was purposefully disguising his own handwriting. So they said that was proof that Dreyfus wrote this letter, this bordereau. And then you get into secret courts and protecting the establishment, protecting the French army, the reputation. It was all during this lead up to the trial and the accusations, the indictment of Dreyfus. A lot of people realized and were uncomfortable with the evidence because there was no evidence. Especially after they arrested him.
We just, as we were researching it tonight, they just in 2013 revealed. What was that?
Oh, they just released.
It was 4 pieces of evidence
that the
relating
French
to
army
the Dreyfus.
Sent to the military tribunal.
That had been secret
until 2013,
several years ago. Which reminds me, there was something here in the Russian coup that they were going to seal the records until 2041. I can't remember what that was. But it's crazy because the effects of the Dreyfus affair are still going on now. But I mean, if you read through the Dreyfus affair, and I've ordered the book, that book that we saw, because there hasn't really been like one that encompassed like the whole affair, because there's a lot to it. It affected and changed them. As a matter of fact, after the Dreyfus affair and after Dreyfus was cleared, it took about 10 years, maybe 12 years. They did a divestiture of the military, and that didn't even get completed until like 1982. Which look at them now. They got more problems than that. But the Dreyfus affair and the Trump Russia, and then the people that are being Mike Morrison being banned off of Twitter, and then you've got who were the 5 that were kicked off of Instagram and Facebook?
Yeah.
I mean, Paul Joseph Watson. I mean, what rules did he violate? But another thing on this Dreyfus affair is okay. So when so you've got you got the same kind of dynamics going on right now as you did back then. You've got kind of the elites of the military.
They're wanting to, they favor monarchy. They don't like the Republican form of government. They don't like commoners getting into the officer ranks of the army.
We have that kind of same thing.
It's an establishment protecting type of deal. They don't, and like even during the indictments and stuff in the trial, a lot of high people were uncomfortable with what was happening, but they went along because they didn't want to damage the reputation of the army. And even after a lot of people saw in the 1896 and 1902 that this was wrong, they still couldn't.
They didn't want to do it. It's kind of like we have the same thing going on now. Like a lot of you know about Mueller. Mueller.
He's an institution guy. He's
an institution guy, and the 4 people in the Whitey Bulger case that he was involved in, the 4 innocent men that the FBI framed, and who Durham, the special investigator that they've hired now to investigate the beginnings of Russia, he helped free those men, and it was Mueller that wanted to keep them
behind bars
even
to
after
save,
he knew, even
to
after
keep
he
their
knew.
witness, Whitey Bulger,
because he wanted to protect the reputation of the FBI. So the FBI's reputation was more important than these innocent men, 2 of which that died in prison, and the other 2 which had 101
million, something like that.
Payout. So you had the same kind of thing going on. I need to ask, we're not seeing any comments, and I wonder if I did something to.
We saw a comment before from Dan, but I don't have anything. I'm not seeing anything.
Yeah. It does.
What's up, Mark?
Hey, Mark. Well, I don't know if y'all are commenting. I can't see the comments. I don't know what I've done. So if you're commenting.
Well, he commented just now.
Oh, hey, y'all. Okay. All right. Maybe they're just not commenting. Okay. We're just so intriguing that
we're just listening.
So anyway, you have a lot of the same dynamics. And as I was reading it in October when we first did this, I remember thinking to myself, man, it's like John Brennan or somebody had read this story and said, hey, right, and followed it step by step. And
instead of a bordereau, we'll call it a dossier, because nobody's going to know what a bordereau is.
Right.
A dossier.
Right. They both sound French and elegant. So anyway, when the whole thing began to unravel, when it was somebody in the military that came upon.
He got appointed to, because the agency that really went after him was the French military intelligence at the time. It was a new concept for them of using spying for, as a art of war, and it was called the Statistics Affairs Office.
Statistics. I can't say it. It's French.
But the new head of that saw that letter was actually.
Somebody published it in the newspaper.
Yeah, and a stockbroker noticed,
and he's like,
that's Esther Hazy's handwriting.
Esther Hazy was a military officer
who was corrupt.
He's actually the one who was guilty. He was the guilty party, and it was then that he realized, and somehow he got in touch with the brother of Dreyfus. And then they started mounting a defense to try to bring this back into the public light, which they did.
And all the while, it took a long time to get Dreyfus rehabilitated, mainly because even people that thought a bad thing was done to him.
Ollie.
Hey, Ollie, what's up?
Thanks for retweeting.
Even though a lot of high-up people in these organizations thought that injustice was done, they were not going to reverse it because of the damage to the reputation of the Army.
It's worse than that. And it's the same thing going on now. John Brennan and all of these people, the upper echelons of our law enforcement agencies and intel communities, they want to protect the agencies, but it goes way beyond that. You're not just keeping quiet because you want to protect their reputation. You're creating evidence. Like, you look at everything.
Well, and they did the same thing that they're backtracking with the Russiagate now. They backtracked on Dreyfus because they had to cover their tracks. So they forged more documents several years later to justify the previous.
Not only that, when they did figure out that it was this Esterhazy guy, they held a trial. Okay, so first of all, when they held the Dreyfus affair, it was like the trial of the century. All your media. With the media, just everybody was involved, and it was weeks. It wasn't just one trial. It was like 6, I think, and it was just a big, major ordeal. Okay, so then we find out who actually did it.
Although the court proceedings themselves were secret because it was a military court, and they kept that secret, so the prosecution did not actually have to publicize how weak their case was.
Right, and the prosecution was not worried about Dreyfus being convicted because he had seen the evidence or the lack thereof.
Yeah, his defense attorney actually, when he finally saw the evidence, was like, "We're going to win. We're golden."
Right. So they weren't even worried about losing. So when Dreyfus was convicted, they're like, "What? what the hell?
Mhm.
You know, he didn't know that, kind of like now, there was a witch hunt. There was collusion going on between a whole lot of people to cover up. And actually, it wasn't just covering up for the leaker. You know, there was an affair between the two homosexual officials.
Yeah.
That anyway, that's another story. But okay, so the Esterhazy, when they found out that it was him, they held a quick, fast-track trial in secret that lasted 2 days and took them 3 minutes to clear
Say
him.
not guilty.
To clear him, and they got 3 handwriting experts to go in there and say, "Oh no, that's not his writing."
Yeah.
So Dreyfus is sitting there in jail. He gets shipped off to Devil's Island in French Guiana. He's already been there 5 years.
And this is also parallel to a lot of the Russiagate stuff with the way they portrayed these two men.
Yeah.
Dreyfus was considered this threat to security. He was terrible, but he was actually a good family man.
Right.
Who had money, who had no reason to betray his country for money.
And
Esterhazy
was in
a
debt,
drunk,
a gambler. Not good with his money. He had every reason in the world to leak, secrets.
He didn't have the
money.
pedigree that he needed to be up in the upper French echelon. He was a illegitimate
and
son of an illegitimate person.
Yeah, and so kind of with this whole Russian coup thing, you've got Hillary as Esterhazy, and you've got Trump. So they cleared Hillary, and they went after Trump, and then even after the Mueller report showed that there was no collusion. Now you've got Congress,
And the media is a big player in both cases. And what this guy said in this book was basically they used fabricated stuff and terrible fiction.
Right.
To paint these things.
We've got the same thing going on because I don't know if a lot of you know that the author of the Steele dossier was not Steele. Steele was just brought on to put in an air of legitimacy to it. It was Glenn Simpson. I mean, that's what I think. It hasn't been proven yet, but I think Glenn Simpson wrote that. But they knew that they couldn't get a FISA court to buy off on Fusion GPS's Glenn Simpson's dossier. So anyway, Dreyfus is rotting away.
The Devil's
Island in French Guiana. And get this, so I don't know how bad conditions were. I didn't really read about
terrible.
But they did his cell in a way that you could not see the ocean. So you're out, French Guiana is, it's on the northern part of South America, right there on the ocean, but you're looking at, I guess, a bunch of rocks. So for 5 years, he did have access to books.
And then for a couple of months, he was put into a position where he was chained to his bed and he couldn't move for a couple of months. Because of a report from a British paper saying of some kind of, they fabricated some story of him attempting to escape.
And that's another reason I call what we have going on is like the Dreyfus affair on steroids, because when you say stuff like that, it's like, think about, okay, Paul Manafort, when they raided his house. I don't know if y'all know the story when, it was an early morning no-knock raid. They scared, them out of bed, his wife. They were mean. They were mean to her and the dog. I vaguely remember just how horrible they were to them. And then you've got, what's her name? Chelsea Manning. Is going back in jail for contempt of court. And then you've got that Maria Butina,
she was in solitary for a while, and she was a Russian spy.
We don't have, Mueller said no collusion, but okay, we've got all these people.
All this collateral damage.
It's just so wrong. But, okay, so he's over there rotting away at Devil's Island.
Leading up to that, when his wife finds out about his arrest via the raid on her apartment by police, and they treated her poorly.
Treated her horribly. Scared her, told her.
Same tactics.
They told her, don't you talk about this to anyone.
Yeah, can't say one
They threatened.
word.
They threatened her, saying that it could lead to war.
It could lead to a war. Yeah, they used that several times in several stages of that prosecution.
Yeah. So he's rotting away in prison, and then he's got his brother and his wife and some other people, and some people in the military that know that he didn't do this, who are fighting for his defense. And then they find out about the Esterhazy, and they do bring attention back on it enough to reopen it, and they bring him back, but he's still in jail. And then that's when the whole trial for Esterhazy happens, which they have in secret the last 2 days. And boom, the jury deliberated for 3 minutes and cleared him of all wrongdoing. Meanwhile, Dreyfus is still sitting in jail. And so then you had, I think it was after that when Emile Zola wrote
He had his new trial. Dreyfus had his new trial, and they still found him guilty, but extenuating circumstances.
It wasn't as bad.
So the Army's trying to waffle and have it both ways, where they don't damage their reputation, but we can see that maybe he wasn't all-out spy or something. And then Zola
comes out with her j'accuse, which means I accuse in English, and writes out, just basically a simple white paper with all the evidence. And that really, it went viral. Kind of like the pamphlets in the Revolution, where one little pamphlet would spread, like Common Sense. Anyway, it went viral. So he didn't end up having another trial. That France got a new president, Emile. Oh, what's that guy's name? I just had it. Anyway, Emile Louvain. Anyway, he pardoned him instead of going through another trial. And actually, he ran on the platform that Dreyfus was innocent, and that was a wrong that needed to be righted, and so he was pardoned. He would go on to fight again because he was reinstated into the military, and he went on to fight in World War I, and he died with honors. But you're talking about 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
You devote all of your life to your country. This doesn't sound like General Flynn. I mean, General Flynn, didn't go to jail, and of course, I don't know what's going to happen with his sentencing, but he's a good man, devoted his life to his country, and then one day, you support the wrong candidate, and they come after you to make an example of you.
And that's where we're at today, and people getting deplatformed and suspended on Twitter and Facebook, Instagram, everywhere.
Yeah.
And it seems to be always punching right pretty much every time. And they're doing this because we have this medium that can bust up stuff like Russiagate and
we have too much power. It's like leveled the playing field. We have too much power, and they're going to try and take that away, and it's not looking good for us right now. I'm an eternal optimist, but there's only so much you can take. I don't know how this ends up.
But it's kind of like it's almost like closing the barn door after the horse is gone, because a lot of people have woken up, and there's still a lot of people waking up every day.
Right.
So there's so much we've been lied to about.
Where's that? Oh, the New Yorker had a
great article.
Aunt Adam Gopnik wrote revisiting the Dreyfus affair. That's where I got the title of this Periscope from, because he was talking about how the Dreyfus affair matters because we're still in the middle of it, and he was comparing it to, say, Guantanamo and all of the prisoners there, and you can debate that, but I think he's got a point. I don't understand why.
Yeah. And it basically, he says the Dreyfus affair is important because we've created our own Devil's Island, and we've got hundreds of Dreyfuses now.
And where he's thinking the prisoners of Guantanamo are the Dreyfuses,
I think that from Trump on down, and anybody who supports him,
right,
especially on Twitter or Facebook,
to be wrongly accused because the Covington Catholic boys. There's this long list of people on the right. If you don't support the right things, if you're guilty of wrong things, they will come after you with a vengeance. Even manufacturing evidence. What they did to the Covington Catholic boys, but I do think that they will come out on the top end of that.
And Law and Order going after him.
Law and Order recently, even after knowing
making a hero out of Ilhan.
That story didn't happen the way they said, painted them the way the whole mainstream media broke out the story, like as if we had never found out what the truth was.
And it can't be stressed enough the similarities between these two cases, Russiagate and all the bannings and stuff, and then with the Dreyfus affair, the media plays a crucial role in both cases.
Yeah.
The media fanned the flames of anti-Jewishness in France. And, France was actually at that time in the 1890s was one of the first European nations, I believe, to open up the army and positions of power to the Jewish people. They were reforming and leading the way that way, but there was still an undercurrent of people that hated. And actually, a lot. It's kind of ironic is that a lot of they call them Dreyfusards
Yeah.
and then anti-Dreyfusards.
Right.
And a lot of the people that were for Dreyfus were actually considered anti-Semitic at the time.
Yeah.
A lot of people that were against him weren't. So it wasn't just that. He was a perfect fall guy.
Yeah.
Because of the relations at the time with the Germans. And
and if you
Russians
read about a lot of the qualities of Dreyfus, that like him being a good, upstanding man, like those kind of qualities were held against him.
Yeah,
like,
they used all of his character traits that were actually positive to paint and say he surely is guilty.
And I think they did the same thing with General Flynn.
Yeah.
Like if you look at how they took him down, they knew how he would react. He's this honest man, and there's even, General Flynn was. What was he doing? He was involved in an operation.
Talking about when he was overseas, and actually McCabe knew he was actually.
Yeah, but he didn't. He could have told them all, like, look, I'm involved. I'm still doing this with the IC, and he didn't because it would endanger the op itself or people. I don't know, but they knew. They knew that about him, that he was an honorable man. They knew, and they hoped that it would never come out.
That's why they had to take him down. Because an honorable man would have said the truth.
And maybe one of the differences between now and the Dreyfus affair. Can you imagine the Dreyfus affair if they'd had Twitter?
Yeah,
it would have been a totally different.
That Emily
Zola, Jacques Hughes would have happened before he went to Devil's Island.
Yeah.
But it's another reason they've got to shut us down, because they can't keep control of what's going on, and you can't control trying to control the information on the public square. I should have highlighted this New Yorker article on it's the New Yorker, and it's titled "Trial of the Century." I encourage you all to go read it because it's very interesting. It talked when they first. I did not know this, that when they convicted Alfred Dreyfus, they marched him after he was convicted that first time. They marched him through the street, stripped him of all his medals, and publicly degraded him before a gawking crowd. So kind of like the Game of Thrones, walk of shame.
And then they jeered at him, spat on him.
His sword was broken over the knee. He was marched around the grounds in his ruined uniform to be jeered at and spat at, while declaring his innocence and his love of France. Public torture. And they did this all the while, the people that did this knowing that he was an innocent man. So, while you're watching these.
Plus, the general of the army at the time, Mercier, had been accused of being incompetent, basically, and was never worried about relations with Germany because they'd been in a recent war with them back in the 1870s. So there was still a lot of hanging from that, opening wound in France from the Franco-Prussian War. And so Mercier, I think part of this was also to embolden his reputation, make him look better.
Right. Every step of the way, if you go and research it and read it about all the different people, I think maybe I'll do a blog post on this. I can almost take all the characters, because like that one general, when we first find the handwritten letter in the basket, the general, that just reminds me of John Brennan. Mm-hmm. Everyone's got a character, and it coincides with the Russian coup that's going on today.
Brennan's got a dossier, the other guy's got a bordereau.
Right. Yeah, it always cracks me up, the terms that they use. They that's another way that they control you.
Dress it up.
I wish I had known that. So in the beginning, we would have known what to break down and look for. Because,
I don't get it.
I don't get it.
We don't even have trolls commenting this time.
Yeah, usually we have all kinds of comments, trolls. But the last 3 times we've done these periscopes, we don't see comments. But sometimes when I go back and watch the periscope, I see.
Yeah.
and I'd be like, I couldn't interact with them when they were talking. So if you're out there, send a comment. I want to see if, hey Dan, can you send just a hello? Good to finally put a voice to your thing. Thanks. So I don't know what's going on the last 3 times because it's not really letting us interact with our audience. Because I'd really love to hear people, especially anybody out there that's familiar with the Dreyfus affair.
Yeah.
I don't think Will is in this scope.
No.
But his scope was very interesting. If you haven't seen it yet.
Well, just you can go down a rabbit hole with the Dreyfus affair. It's so complicated.
Man, and there's so many different. Even the president that pardoned him, I couldn't find it this time. I had it when we did our scope in October. He was elected president, and when I was reading about who he was and what he did, he kind of reminded me of Trump in that the elites didn't really like him. They didn't like his ways. They maybe considered him kind of Bulgarian, and so just interesting that's who pardons. That's who would end up freeing him. Oh wow! Why am I not surprised? I don't know who's going to be left. I figure the banning and the suspensions are going to happen a lot more. I don't think they're going to ban everyone. They don't have to. They'll just ban the biggest and maybe some of the middle.
Especially the big accounts that have an impact and actually do some great reporting.
Yeah. If you look at the message, what was it? Gateway Pundit did an article today on wonder if President knows all of the conservative publications there. Have been deboosted, and they've definitely quashed.
Yeah, I mean, well, Dan, Safe Libraries,
yeah,
is a shadow ban. Although when I retweeted something that tagged Dan yesterday, he actually, when I started typing his handle, it started showing up this time.
Yeah.
So maybe that shadow ban is lifted slightly.
Oh, I don't know. I'll have to check.
Because before I would start typing and it would not.
I had a shadow ban in it last time I checked. My husband had a shadow ban. He only has less than 400 followers, and he's being shadow banned. He's got to search shadow ban.
And I don't know if some of you know about Twitter when you go into your data and then look at your interests that Twitter selects for you every day. A lot of times they'll have like 13 to 18 interests that they've selected, and it's always, Jack Deso that's always in there. Donald Trump's always in there, Donald Trump Jr. But then yesterday I checked it, and it had 285 interests, and it was all leftist stuff and leftist people, and I'm like, they are messing with me. They're actively
and I saw that in mine too. I was subscribed to all this left stuff, and I don't know how they decide that.
You got to go in there and unclick them individually.
You can't mass click
there's no
all
unclick all.
So I
and
don't
that's
know
how they kind of steer what happens to you.
Yeah.
That's one of their tools.
But then I wonder, so he started a Brian Stelter parody account called Brian Stelter Does News.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if, because that's on the left, if they're, I don't know, but that's not the Brian Stelter account.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Never seen it jump like that.
I don't know. But, we did one Periscope where, did one Periscope where we titled it "Nothing New Under the Sun," and this is indicative.
Falls right under that.
Of that, I mean, this is a living, breathing Dreyfus affair.
Repeated hundreds of times every day over the country.
The handwriting supposedly expert the first time.
Audio problems now. What's up?
Can you hear? Anybody else having audio problems?
Okay, cool.
Okay. That's it. Somebody called again. What was I saying? The handwriting expert during the first trial. What is that? He created that line of this new line of.
And then it was
graphology, or
no, it was. He called himself a graphologist.
He created this science that wasn't really science.
Yeah. So he was an expert in what was it called?
I can't remember. But anyway, so he
And then they even said that Dreyfus the reason they didn't have all this evidence because Dreyfus destroyed it all, which was more proof of his guilt. Which they couldn't find the evidence because he destroyed it.
Well,
I think maybe that could be a Jerry Nadler
yeah.
of yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's just like the handwriting expert that said that it was his handwriting because he was trying to make it seem like it wasn't his handwriting. I can't remember the term that he called that, but just reminded me of the scene in The Princess Bride, where
with the rice, what is the name of the poison that's made up?
ricin.
It's not rice. Iocane.
Iocane. Yeah, iocane powder. And he's sitting across from him, telling him what.
I cannot. And then obviously I cannot do the goblet that you place in front of you, and he keeps pulling back and forth.
That's what reminds me of. Anyway, I don't know what's going on with their comments, y'all.
I don't either. Nothing over here either. But I guess we got a little. We're going to have an update next week. Last month we did a scope. Talked to Dan Kleiman at Safe Libraries.
He's in the
the
scope
chat
right now.
We talked to him and we talked to Shannon.
And we're going to have
Houston.
an update because she's working on another story, which I won't say anything about.
Regarding Drag Queen Story Hour and drag queens that are actual convicted pedophiles reading to kids in our public libraries. And this has even happened in Crossville, Tennessee just a few weeks ago. So
Yeah.
it's not a San Francisco, New York, LA thing. It's all over
everywhere.
the country.
So so that'll just be a separate scope.
Probably maybe a week from today or something like that.
I think she said sometime next week or in a week. So we'll do that. Also towards the end of the month, or whoever's interested, we're gonna do a book review. Yeah, what? They shadow banned me after we did the scope, which was titled, what was it? Libraries
becoming a real drag.
Yeah. So I happen to think it was probably that got me shadow banned.
Yeah, I wonder why that stayed like that.
Yeah, I don't know. So anyway, towards the end of the month, I want to do it hopefully before the release of the OIG report, a book review on Sidney Powell's License to Lie.
Because we need to really inform people of what a DB Weissman is, and how for decades he's been ruining
Weissman,
people.
I don't understand for the life of me after the Enron cases. I don't know if y'all know the Enron cases, that all of the cases were overturned on appeal. And Sidney Powell wrote a book on her experiences with that. And because she represented somebody from Merrill Lynch, I think. And Weissman was involved in that. And so by reading License to Lie, you can really get a feel for who Andrew Weissman is.
And then the Ted Stevens trial, the senator from Alaska.
Yeah. But the thing about who's the judge? Was it Flood?
Emmett Sullivan. He knows all of this. He actually appointed a special prosecutor after the Ted Stevens trial to investigate the actions by the prosecutors in that case.
And so I makes me wonder,
one of them. And so
why was he promoted? Why did he go higher after that?
But then he has the Flynn case in front of him.
Right.
And he knows that Weissman's not the man in the courtroom at that time, but he is the man leading
Weissman
that case.
held back exculpatory evidence that would have
in all those cases, and coached witnesses in the Ted Stevens trial.
And so I want to do a book review on this, and so you can see the government. It's not just Andrew Weissman; it's some other ones. But Andrew Weissman, because he's involved with, or was on the Mueller witch hunt, he's gone now thanks to Barr. But I want people to really understand who this. He's not a good guy, and nobody that works with him is Christopher Wray, Mueller. They're all cut from the same cloth. So if you're interested in doing that, go ahead and get the book License to Lie. It's an interesting, very interesting.
Very good read. She writes really well.
Yeah, it reads like it's a true story. It writes like a novel. It's fascinating. So hopefully some of you will do that. I don't know what our schedule looks like, so I don't know what day it'll be on, but I want to do it just a few days before the OIG, or even the day before.
And you can see that they're scrambling all these Russia gators are scrambling now because some people believe that IG report has already hit the targets because they get to look at it first with their lawyers,
Yeah.
the people that are targeted in it or
Right.
named in it. So some people believe that maybe that's the reason that all this scrambling is happening now with Tony and all these. They're all getting a little desperate. Because then you see former FBI lawyer Baker. All of a sudden,
Oh,
you
yeah.
never heard from him, but all of a sudden we seen him last week.
Yeah, and they asked, "Are you nervous about that OIG?" He's like, "Well, I'm always nervous about the OIG, but
Shouldn't be.
yeah,
Just like they always tell.
if you're not doing
tell
anything
Trump,
wrong,
if you're not doing anything
if you
wrong,
don't
you
do
have nothing
anything
to worry
wrong, why
about.
don't you come in and talk to the FBI? You know, they're
Yeah.
your friends. You know, they don't want to. They're not out to get you."
So we should just add that to our rules because we always sign off our episodes with saying the 48-hour rule. Wait,
Yeah.
when you see something in the major
The
news,
breaking news, don't believe it for sure. Just wait till
and
it's
sometimes you
been
only have to wait 48 hours.
corroborated.
It's going to be corrected or
Just
taken
like
down
New York Times walked back today, was it today?
yesterday or today.
The George Papadopoulos.
That's what started the FBI
Well,
investigation.
Well, they said that it was part of what started. Before they were saying, no, they walked that back. That's all they seem to do these days: corrections and walking back.
So adding to the 48-hour rule, we need to add that never talk to the FBI without
Never.
an attorney.
Never.
Never just go, oh, I'll just tell them the truth. That doesn't work.
As a matter of fact, that's in the license to lie book. Sydney Powell, the guy that she represented, had done nothing wrong. And that's what he thought. Well, I'll just tell them.
Yeah.
And then a month later, it's horrible what happened to him. So anyway, buy that book, License to Lie, if you want to be involved in the book review. Or if you don't and you just want to tune in and listen.
And follow us on Twitter @_Yvonne Burton and @LewisEverett3, LEWIS.
Yeah. And thanks for tuning in. And if you commented and we didn't see that, I'm sorry.
Sorry we couldn't see comments.
Oh,
We
look.
saw some. We saw those.
Oh, we did? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. I don't know. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you probably in less than 2 weeks.
Thanks, guys.
Later. Let's do this. All right.